The great council chamber of Apex Prime Station hummed with quiet energy. 12 different alien species sat around the massive circular table, each representative wearing the formal robes of the Hegemony Council. The air recyclers worked overtime to maintain an atmosphere that all species could breathe, creating a strange mix of scents and gases that reminded everyone this was neutral ground. Admiral Zexhai of the Korthani Empire tapped his 6-clawed fingers against the polished metal surface. His scaled face showed the confidence of someone who had negotiated hundreds of treaties. Around the table, other council members shared his calm demeanor. The ethereal collective's representative floated in a containment field, their gaseous form shifting between colors. The machine-like delegates from the synthesis sat perfectly still, their red optical sensors fixed on the center of the table. The humans have been given 3 standard cycles to respond, Zexhai announced to the assembly. His voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. Our message was clear. They must stop expanding into the contested sectors or face the consequences. Councilmember Thys of the Serpentine Republic leaned forward, her serpentine hood flaring slightly. Admiral, are we certain these humans understand the gravity of their situation? They are a young species. Perhaps they do not fully grasp what it means to face the combined might of 12 advanced civilizations. Zexhai's mandibles clicked in what his species considered amusement. Intelligence reports suggest they are reasonable beings. Primitive, yes, but not foolish. They have established trade relationships with several minor species. They follow basic diplomatic protocols. When they see our assembled fleets, they will understand. The holographic display at the center of the table showed the current military positions. Over 3,000 warships from the hegemony forces surrounded human space. Each fleet represented the best technology their respective species had developed over millennia. The humans had maybe 200 ships scattered across their territory, most of them converted civilian vessels with basic weapons. Their technology is centuries behind ours, continued the admiral. Their fastest ships take weeks to travel, distances our vessels cover in days. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. They know this. Commander Voss of the Titan Collective, a massive humanoid creature with cybernetic implants covering half his face, spoke in his deep, rumbling voice. What terms do we offer them? Surely we must give them some way to save face. Young species often need to preserve their pride even in defeat. Zexhai pulled up another display showing the proposed treaty terms. We are being generous. They may keep their core worlds and their established colonies. We ask only that they withdraw from the 3 contested sectors and accept hegemony oversight of their future expansion. In return, we offer them protection and limited access to our trade networks. Several council members nodded approvingly. This was how civilized species handled territorial disputes. There would be some negotiation, perhaps a few minor changes to the terms, and then a signing ceremony. The humans would join dozens of other junior members of the hegemony, grateful for the protection and opportunities their new status provided. How long do we expect negotiations to take? Asked the representative from the crystal mines. Their question transmitted directly into everyone's thoughts through their telepathic abilities. Based on similar situations with other emerging species, perhaps 2 or 3 weeks, Zexhai replied. Humans seem to enjoy lengthy discussions and debate. Our diplomatic corps is prepared for extensive talks about trade percentages, territorial boundaries, and technology sharing agreements. The Void Speaker's delegate, a creature that existed partially in normal space and partially in another dimension, rippled their response into reality. And if they refuse? The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every member of the council knew what happened to species that refused hegemony ultimatums. The ruins of dead civilizations served as monuments throughout the galaxy to the consequences of defying the established order. They will not refuse, Zexhai said firmly. No species has ever chosen annihilation when offered reasonable terms. The humans have families, children, hopes for the future. They will see that cooperation is their only path to survival. Outside the station's massive viewing ports, the assembled hegemony fleets could be seen as points of light scattered across the darkness of space. Each ship represented thousands of years of technological advancement, weapons that could crack planets, and defenses that had never been breached. The sight was designed to inspire awe and terror in equal measure. "I have studied human history," offered the scholarly caste representative from the academic worlds. "They are a warlike species, but they understand superior force. Their own planet's history shows they surrender when facing overwhelming odds. They are not fanatics who choose death over compromise." HFY accessed his personal files on human civilization. The reports painted a picture of a species that had learned to live together after centuries of conflict. They had formed a unified government, developed space travel, and established peaceful contact with several alien races. Their diplomatic missions had been polite and professional. Everything suggested they would follow established galactic protocols when faced with superior force. "The humans will send their diplomats," he concluded. "They will arrive with prepared statements and negotiating positions. They will try to gain small advantages and minimize their losses. This is how all civilized species respond to ultimatums. We will listen to their concerns, make minor adjustments to appear reasonable, and within a month, we will have another junior member in the hegemony." The council members began discussing the practical details of the upcoming negotiations. Which station would host the talks? What cultural considerations needed to be observed? How to arrange the signing ceremony for maximum publicity? The hegemony had turned diplomacy into a refined art form over thousands of years. None of them noticed the small quantum disturbance at the edge of their sensor range. A tiny ripple in space-time that lasted less than a microsecond before vanishing. The automated systems recorded it as a minor sensor glitch and deleted the data to free up storage space. The council session ended with confident handshakes, knowing nods, and satisfied expressions. Admiral HFY retired to his quarters to review the prepared treaty documents one final time. Everything was proceeding exactly as expected. The humans would respond within the deadline, and the galaxy would remain under proper hegemony control. He had no way of knowing that humanity's response was already on its way. Admiral HFY was reviewing diplomatic protocols when the alert came through his personal communicator. The soft chime indicated an incoming message from the sensor array operators. He expected routine updates about fleet positions or perhaps early word of the human diplomatic vessel's departure from their space. "Admiral," came the voice of Sensor Chief Kalami, one of his most trusted officers. "We have detected a human ship approaching the outer perimeter. Single vessel. No escort." HFY felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him. The humans were responding even faster than expected. "Excellent. What class of vessel? A diplomatic cruiser or perhaps one of their larger passenger ships?" There was a pause on the communication line. "Sir, it's difficult to classify. The ship appears to be mid-sized, roughly equivalent to a light cruiser. But the design doesn't match any known human configuration in our databases." "New construction, perhaps," HFY mused. "Young species often build special ships for important diplomatic missions." "What are they calling it?" "The vessel identifies itself as UHSV Pandora's Box, registration number." Kalami's voice trailed off. "Admiral, they're listing their ship type as research and development platform, not diplomatic vessel." HFY's mandibles clicked with mild confusion. "Research platform? Perhaps it's a translation error. Humans have strange naming conventions. Is the ship transmitting any diplomatic codes or requests for formal negotiation protocols?" "They've requested standard docking permission at Apex Prime Station. The message is brief, sir." The ship's captain identifies herself as Elena Vasquez and simply states that humanity is responding to the Council's invitation. The Admiral accessed his personal view screen to see the approaching vessel. The ship looked unremarkable by galactic standards, a blocky, utilitarian design with no obvious aesthetic considerations. It bore little resemblance to the sleek diplomatic vessels usually sent for important negotiations. There were no decorative elements, no ceremonial weapon arrays, no external signs of the pomp and circumstance that typically accompanied such meetings. Has the ship transmitted their diplomatic credentials? Surely they have brought proper documentation. Gifts for the council members. and prepared statements. Another pause. No, sir. Just the docking request and identification. The transmission lasted less than 10 seconds. HFY found this mildly irritating but not entirely surprising. Younger species sometimes needed to learn proper diplomatic etiquette through experience. Very well. Grant them docking permission at Bay 7. Assign a standard diplomatic escort to guide them through station protocols. Alert the council that our guests have arrived early. As he closed the communication channel, HFY couldn't shake a small feeling of unease. Something about the situation felt wrong, though he couldn't identify what. Perhaps it was the ship's strange classification, or the brevity of their communications, or simply the fact that they had sent only one vessel. Across the station, other council members were receiving similar reports. The general consensus was that the humans were either very confident or very naive. A single ship suggested either complete surrender or complete ignorance of the situation they faced. They must be bringing surrender documents, speculated Commander Voss, as he spoke with his aide. No species sends one ship to negotiate with 12 civilizations unless they're ready to accept whatever terms we offer. In the sensor control room, Chief Kalami was studying the readings from the human vessel with growing confusion. The ship's energy signature was unlike anything in the database. It wasn't just different from other human ships, it was different from any ship he had ever seen. The readings fluctuated in patterns that made no sense according to known physics. Run a full spectrum analysis, he ordered his technicians. I want to know what kind of power plant they're running and what those energy spikes mean. The results that came back made him request the scan twice more, thinking there must be an error. The ship appeared to have multiple power sources, all running on principles he couldn't identify. There were quantum distortions around what should be the engine compartment, and the ship's mass kept fluctuating slightly as if it existed in more than 3 dimensions. Sir, one of his technicians called out nervously, the ship's energy readings just spiked by 400%, then returned to normal. All in less than a second. Kalami stared at the data in confusion. What could cause that kind of power fluctuation? Unknown, sir. The spike was large enough to power a battleship's main weapons array. But we detected no weapon signatures. It's as if the energy just disappeared. Meanwhile, the UHSV Pandora's Box continued its steady approach to the station. From the outside, it looked completely ordinary. Just another ship requesting docking permission. The hull showed signs of recent construction, but nothing obviously threatening. There were no visible weapon ports, no shield generators, no external signs of advanced technology. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her unusual vessel, watching Apex Prime Station grow larger on the main view screen. Around her, a small crew went about their duties with quiet efficiency. The bridge looked more like a research laboratory than a military command center, filled with equipment that served mysterious purposes. Distance to station? She asked her navigation officer. 200,000 kilometers in closing, Captain. Station Control has assigned us Docking Bay 7. Vasquez nodded. Very good. Signal engineering to begin final preparations. And Lieutenant Park? A young Asian woman turned from her science station. Yes, Captain? Make sure all our systems are properly calibrated. We'll only get one chance to make a good impression. It's teen. Lieutenant Park's expression was grim. All systems green, Captain. The field generators are stable. The containment protocols are active. And the safety interlocks are engaged. Though I still think we should have brought more ships as backup. One ship is enough, Vasquez replied quietly. More than enough. As the Pandora's Box approached the massive space station, Admiral HFY prepared for what he assumed would be routine surrender negotiations. The council chamber was being prepared with proper ceremony. Documentation was being printed, and the media representatives were being notified of the upcoming treaty signing. None of them had any idea that they were about to meet a species that had taken a completely different approach to the problem of superior force. While the hegemony had spent thousands of years perfecting larger fleets and more powerful weapons, humanity had spent the last several decades asking a much more dangerous question. What if the rules of physics were really just suggestions? The Pandora's box settled into its assigned docking bay with mechanical precision. To the casual observer, it looked like any other visiting ship. Only the most sensitive instruments detected the subtle wrongness in the space around it. The way light bent slightly as it passed near the hull. The way gravity seemed to fluctuate in microscopic amounts. The way reality itself seemed to hold its breath in the presence of something that shouldn't exist. Captain Vasquez checked her chronometer. Right on schedule. Time to show the galaxy what happened when humans were asked to negotiate. The first sign that something was wrong came from the station's maintenance crew. Engineer Volthak, a methodical creature from the Silicon Collective, was conducting routine checks on the docking bay systems when his instruments began reporting impossible readings. The docking bay's structural integrity sensors are malfunctioning, he reported to his supervisor, through his mechanical voice synthesizer. They show gravitational fluctuations around the human vessel that cannot be real. His supervisor, a veteran engineer who had worked on Apex Prime for 30 years, came to examine the readings personally. The numbers made no sense. The docking bay's gravity plates were designed to maintain perfect one-standard gravity throughout the area, but the sensors showed tiny waves of gravitational distortion emanating from the human ship. Run a full diagnostic on all sensors, the supervisor ordered. These readings suggest the ship has mass fluctuations equivalent to a small moon. While the engineering team struggled with their impossible data, Admiral Zexhai received his first hint that this diplomatic mission might not proceed as planned. Sensor Chief Kalami's latest report contained information that made the Admiral request clarification 3 times. "You're telling me the ship's quantum signature is unstable?" Zexhai asked, his confusion evident in his voice. "Not unstable, sir." "Impossible," Kalami replied. "The ship appears to exist in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Our sensors can detect it clearly, but the readings suggest it's also somehow not entirely present in normal space-time." Admiral Zexhai had commanded fleets for over 4 decades. He had seen experimental ships, prototype weapons, and technology that pushed the boundaries of known science. But he had never encountered anything that made his sensors question the basic laws of physics. What kind of power source could cause such effects? "Unknown, sir. The energy patterns don't match any known technology. It's as if they're drawing power from sources that shouldn't exist." In the council chamber, representatives from the 12 species were beginning to receive similar reports from their own technical teams. The Ethereal Collective's representative, normally calm and composed, showed signs of agitation as their gaseous form shifted rapidly between colors. "Our psychic sensors detect something deeply wrong with that vessel," they communicated to the assembled council. "It feels like a wound in reality itself." The machine delegates from the synthesis ran continuous calculations, their optical sensors flickering rapidly as they processed data. Analysis indicates the ship's technology operates on principles outside known physical laws. Recommendation: extreme caution advised. Captain Elena Vasquez disembarked from her ship with a small party of 5 humans. They wore simple diplomatic uniforms with no obvious weapons or ceremonial items. Vasquez herself appeared to be a woman in her 40s, with graying hair and calm eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. As they walked through the station's corridors toward the council chamber, sensitive individuals among the crew began to feel uneasy. The station's telepaths reported strange sensations when the humans passed by, like looking into a deep well that had no bottom. The empathic species spoke of feeling something vast and patient hiding behind the humans' polite facades. Captain Vasquez, Admiral Zexhai greeted her as she entered the council chamber. "Welcome to Apex Prime. The council is ready to begin formal negotiations regarding the territorial agreements." Vasquez smiled politely and took the offered seat at the center of the circular table. Her delegation arranged themselves behind her. Saying nothing, the silence stretched for several moments as the Admiral waited for the traditional diplomatic opening statements. "We appreciate the invitation," Vasquez finally said, her voice carrying a strange undertone that made several council members shift uncomfortably. "However, before we begin discussing terms, I think it's important that everyone understands the current situation clearly." Admiral Zexhai nodded approvingly. This was more like proper diplomatic protocol. "Indeed, Captain." We have prepared comprehensive terms that we believe address both our security concerns and humanity's legitimate expansion needs. Admiral, Vasquez interrupted gently, I think there's been a misunderstanding about why we're here. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Something in the human's tone suggested that the carefully planned diplomatic script was about to be discarded. We received your ultimatum, she continued, her voice remaining perfectly calm. 3 cycles to withdraw from contested space, or face the consequences of defying the hegemony. A very clear message delivered with impressive force to ensure we understood our position. Several council members nodded, pleased that the humans grasped the situation. The thing is, Vasquez said, leaning back in her chair, humanity has a different approach to negotiations. We find that discussions tend to be more productive when all parties truly understand what's at stake. Admiral Zexhai felt a chill run down his spine. Captain, I assure you we understand the stakes perfectly. The hegemony controls over 3,000 worlds. Yes, we're aware of your impressive military capabilities, Vasquez said, cutting him off again. But you seem to have misunderstood something fundamental about our response. We didn't send the Pandora's box because we were ready to surrender. We sent it because this is how humans negotiate. The council chamber fell completely silent. Outside the viewing ports, the hegemony fleets maintained their positions, visible proof of overwhelming superiority. Yet somehow, the presence of one human woman and 5 companions had shifted the entire dynamic of the meeting. I don't understand, Admiral Zexhai said carefully. Vasquez's smile didn't reach her eyes. Admiral, you and your colleagues have spent millennia perfecting the art of conventional warfare. Bigger ships, stronger shields, more powerful weapons. It's an impressive achievement, truly. She paused, letting her gaze move around the table to meet the eyes of each council member in turn. But while you were perfecting the old rules, humanity was asking different questions. What if the laws of physics aren't actually laws? What if they're more like guidelines? What if the universe is far more flexible than anyone imagined? Commander Voss leaned forward, his cybernetic implants whirring as they processed her words. What exactly are you saying, Captain? I'm saying that the ship docked in your bay doesn't carry weapons, Vasquez replied softly. The Pandora's box is the weapon. We built a vessel that doesn't destroy things by shooting at them. It destroys things by removing them from existence entirely. The Void Speaker's representative rippled in distress. Impossible. Such technology would require mastery of fundamental forces beyond any known science. Yes, Vasquez agreed. It would. We spent 40 years figuring out how to do impossible things. Turns out, when you stop accepting limitations as permanent, you can accomplish remarkable feats. Admiral Zexhai's hands trembled slightly as he accessed his personal communicator. Sensor Chief Kalami, I need updated readings on the human vessel. Full spectrum analysis, maximum resolution. The response came back within minutes, and the Admiral's face went pale as he read it. Captain Vasquez, our sensors indicate your ship is somehow manipulating gravitational fields, quantum states, and dimensional matrices simultaneously. Such technology shouldn't exist, Vasquez finished. Yes, that's what our scientists said too. Right up until the moment they made it work. She stood up slowly, her movement somehow conveying more threat than an entire battle fleet. So let's discuss new terms, shall we? Because the old rules just stopped applying. Admiral Zexhai's voice cracked slightly as he spoke into his communicator. All fleet commanders. This is Admiral Zexhai. Raise shields and prepare weapons. Target the human vessel immediately. Captain Vasquez watched him with the patient expression of someone who had expected exactly this reaction. Admiral, I strongly advise against that course of action. You threaten the hegemony with one ship against 3,000, Commander Voss growled, his cybernetic arm whirring as weapon systems activated throughout the massive fleet. Your vessel will be destroyed in seconds. Will it? Vasquez asked quietly. She touched a small device on her wrist. Lieutenant Park, please show our hosts what the Pandora's box can do. Thanks for watching. This last isn't today. Vasquez asked quietly. Through the viewing ports, the assembled council could see the human ship in its docking bay. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then space around the vessel began to change. Reality rippled like water, and the ship seemed to exist in multiple places at once. What's happening? Demanded the ethereal collective representative, their gaseous form cycling rapidly through every color spectrum. Sensor Chief Kalami's voice came through the Admiral's communicator, tight with panic. Sir, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions. The human ship is generating localized space-time curvature equivalent to a small black hole, but contained in some kind of field matrix. The first hegemony fleet to open fire was the Korthani battle group, 6 heavy cruisers that unleashed enough firepower to level a city. Their plasma bolts and particle beams lanced out toward the Pandora's box and simply vanished, not deflected or absorbed, but erased from existence as if they had never been fired. Report! Admiral Zexhai shouted. The weapons never reached the target, came the confused response from the fleet commander. They disappeared approximately 1,000 kilometers from the human vessel. Sensors show no energy signatures, no debris, no trace of our attack. Captain Vasquez nodded to her communication officer, who activated a holographic display above the council table. It showed a 3-dimensional representation of the space around Apex Prime, with all 3,000 hegemony ships visible as red dots. Your weapons don't disappear, she explained calmly. They're shifted into a parallel dimensional space where they continue to exist, just not in this reality. We've found it's a much cleaner solution than traditional defensive systems. The Crystal Mines representative sent a telepathic burst of terror that every psychic in the chamber felt like a physical blow. This violates every known law of physics. Matter cannot simply be moved between dimensional planes without massive energy expenditure. You're absolutely right, Vasquez agreed. It would require the energy output of a star to accomplish such a feat using conventional technology. Fortunately, we stopped using conventional technology several decades ago. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed energy readings from the Pandora's box. The numbers made no sense. The ship was somehow drawing power from sources that registered as infinite on the sensors. We discovered that reality has certain access points, she continued. Places where the fundamental forces that govern the universe can be influenced directly. It turns out that if you approach the problem correctly, you don't need massive amounts of energy. You just need to convince the universe to rewrite its own rules. Admiral Zexhai watched in horror as more fleets opened fire on the human ship. The same result occurred each time. Weapons fire simply ceased to exist when it came within range of the vessel. But worse than the defensive capabilities was what happened next. Lieutenant Park, Vasquez said softly, please demonstrate our offensive capabilities. Start with Battle Group 7. On the display, 12 hegemony heavy cruisers suddenly weren't there anymore. Not destroyed. Not disabled. Simply gone. The space they had occupied was empty, as if the ships had never existed. Where did they go? Whispered the academic world's representative. Approximately 14 billion light-years in that direction, Vasquez replied, pointing toward an empty section of space. Don't worry, they're perfectly intact. They'll have about 3 million years to contemplate their situation before they reach the nearest galaxy. The council chamber erupted in panicked voices from 12 different species. Emergency communicators activated as representatives tried to contact their home governments. The machine delegates from the synthesis calculated escape routes at maximum processing speed. This is impossible, Admiral Zexhai said, but his voice lacked conviction. No species can manipulate space-time on this scale. You're thinking about it wrong, Vasquez explained patiently. You're trying to apply force to bend the universe to your will. We simply convinced the universe that those ships were already somewhere else. Reality is surprisingly cooperative when you ask nicely. Another battle group vanished. This one sent to an empty region of space between galactic superclusters. Then another, relocated to a position orbiting a neutron star 12,000 light-years away. Stop, Admiral Zexhai begged. Please stop. Vasquez raised her hand, and the impossible effects ceased immediately. The remaining hegemony fleets held their positions, afraid to move, afraid to shoot, afraid to do anything that might draw the attention of the thing they had thought was just a diplomatic vessel. "We're not monsters," Vasquez said gently. "The displaced ships are all intact and habitable. Their crews are alive and unharmed. We've provided them with updated star charts and sufficient supplies for the journey home. It will take them considerable time to return, but they'll have plenty of opportunities to think about the futility of conventional warfare." She turned back to the holographic display and made a small gesture. Suddenly, the space around Apex Prime showed something that made several council members faint. The fabric of reality itself was visible. The underlying quantum structure that supported the existence of matter and energy. It pulsed and flowed like living tissue, and the Pandora's box sat at the center of it like a spider in an impossible web. "This is what we see when we look at the universe," Vasquez explained. "Not a collection of immutable laws, but a dynamic system that can be influenced, modified, and directed. Your species spent millions of years accepting limitations that don't actually exist." The Void Speaker's representative managed to form words despite their terror. What do you want from us?" "Nothing," Vasquez replied simply. "We don't want your territory, your resources, or your technology. We have no interest in conquering or ruling other species." She sat back down at the negotiating table, her posture relaxed and friendly. "But we also won't be dictated to by councils that think superior numbers equal superior arguments. So let's discuss a new arrangement, shall we? One based on mutual respect rather than threats." Admiral Zexhai looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. Every one of them wore the same expression of absolute terror. Their combined fleets, the work of thousands of years of technological development, had been casually brushed aside by a single ship that operated on principles they couldn't even comprehend. What kind of arrangement?" he asked weakly. Captain Vasquez smiled, and for the first time, it reached her eyes. "The kind where everyone gets to go home safely and rethink their approach to interstellar relations. Because the age of negotiating through superior firepower just ended." Outside the viewing ports, the remaining hegemony ships waited in terrified silence, their crews staring at instruments that told them the universe itself had become their enemy. The council chamber remained silent for nearly 10 minutes after the demonstration ended. Admiral Zexhai stared at the holographic display showing the impossible readings from the human ship, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. Around the table, representatives from 12 of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations sat in stunned shock. Captain Vasquez waited patiently, occasionally sipping from a cup of what appeared to be simple earth coffee. Her small delegation showed no signs of stress or urgency. They had the calm demeanor of people who knew they held every advantage in the room. Finally, Commander Voss broke the silence. "How long have you had this technology?" "The Pandora's box completed its trials 18 months ago," Vasquez replied, "though we've been working on the underlying principles for much longer. The breakthrough came when we stopped thinking of physics as laws to obey and started treating them as problems to solve." The ethereal collective representative managed to stabilize their form enough to communicate. "Surely such power must require enormous resources. The energy expenditure alone actually costs us almost nothing," Vasquez interrupted gently. "That's the beauty of working with reality instead of against it. When you convince the universe to cooperate, you don't need to force anything." Admiral Zexhai leaned forward, his clawed hands gripping the edge of the table. "What do you want? Territory? Tribute? Technological exchange? There must be something humanity desires from this demonstration of power." Vasquez set down her coffee cup and looked around the table at each council member. "Admiral, I think you're still misunderstanding our position. We didn't come here to negotiate for things we want. We came here to explain why your ultimatum was based on incorrect assumptions." She activated her wrist device again, and the holographic display changed to show human space. Instead of the scattered colonies the hegemony had expected to see, the display revealed something far more extensive. Human settlements stretched across hundreds of star systems, connected by transportation networks that seem to ignore the conventional limitations of space travel. You see, while your intelligence services were mapping our primitive colonies and counting our inferior ships, they missed the rather important fact that we've been expanding into parallel dimensions for the past 30 years. The academic world's representative made a choking sound. Parallel dimensions? But the energy requirements, the technological complexity, are significantly less challenging when you approach the problem from first principles, Vasquez explained. Your species have spent millennia perfecting variations on the same basic technologies. Faster ships, stronger weapons, better shields. All impressive achievements within the conventional framework. She stood up and walked to the viewing port, looking out at the remaining hegemony fleets. But humans have a different philosophical approach. When we encounter a limitation, our first question isn't, how do we work around this? It's, why does this limitation exist in the first place? The machine delegates from the synthesis process this information at maximum speed. Query. Are you suggesting that your species routinely violates fundamental physical constants? We prefer to think of it as expanding the definition of what's possible, Vasquez replied. Take faster-than-light travel, for example. Your species developed increasingly powerful engines to push through the light-speed barrier. We asked why space-time couldn't simply be convinced to bring destinations closer to us instead. She gestured toward her ship. The Pandora's box doesn't travel faster than light. It adjusts the underlying geometry of space so that distant locations become adjacent. From the ship's perspective, we never actually move at all. Admiral Zex-High felt a deep chill settle in his bones. How many ships like this do you have? The Pandora's box is the only one, Vasquez said, returning to her seat. We didn't need to build a fleet. The silence that followed this statement was profound. Every military strategist in the room understood the implications immediately. If one ship could casually dispose of entire battle groups, what was the point of maintaining thousands of vessels? However, Vasquez continued, I should mention that this is just our prototype. The research teams back home are already working on much more interesting projects. Commander Voss's cybernetic implants sparked slightly. More interesting? The Pandora's box manipulates space-time and dimensional barriers, she explained conversationally. Our next project involves temporal mechanics. We're quite excited about the possibilities of editing causality itself. The Void Speaker's representative made a sound like reality tearing. You're talking about changing the past? And, not changing it, Vasquez corrected, improving it. There are so many inefficiencies in the way events unfold naturally. With proper temporal engineering, we can optimize historical outcomes for maximum benefit to all involved parties. The Crystal Mind's representative sent a burst of pure terror into every psychic mind within range. The concept of a species that could rewrite history itself was beyond nightmare. Of course, that project is still in early development. Vasquez added reassuringly. We're being very careful about the ethical implications. No species should have to worry about their entire civilization being retroactively optimized without consent. Admiral Zex-High realized that his hands were shaking. What are your terms? Vasquez smiled and pulled out a simple data pad. Actually quite reasonable. Humanity will continue expanding into the sectors we've already claimed. The hegemony will respect our territorial sovereignty and our right to develop new technologies without interference. In exchange, we won't retrofit your fleets out of existence or relocate your core worlds to more convenient dimensions. She slid the datapad across the table. We're also prepared to offer limited technological assistance for peaceful applications. Medical advances, environmental restoration, that sort of thing. We believe in being good neighbors. The terms displayed on the pad were startlingly simple. No tribute, no technological servitude, no forced alliance. Just mutual recognition of sovereignty and a promise of non-interference. That's all? Asked the academic world's representative. That's all, Vasquez confirmed. We're not interested in ruling an empire or collecting subject species. We just want to be left alone to ask dangerous questions about how the universe really works. Admiral Zex-High read through the terms 3 times, looking for hidden clauses or unreasonable demands. There were none. The agreement was exactly what it appeared to be. A simple treaty between equals. "And if we refuse?" he asked quietly. Vasquez's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in the room dropped again. "Then we'll be forced to demonstrate some of our other research projects." I should mention that the Pandora's box represents our work in spatial manipulation. We've also made considerable progress in temporal engineering, quantum consciousness transfer, and reality restructuring. She paused to take another sip of coffee. "Though I really hope it doesn't come to that. Cleaning up after reality restructuring experiments is surprisingly tedious work." The council members looked around the table at each other, seeing the same terrified understanding in every face. They had encountered something completely outside their experience, a species that had broken free of the fundamental limitations that governed galactic civilization. Admiral Zexhai picked up the datapad with trembling hands. "Where do we sign?" "Just press your biological identifier to the authorization panel," Vasquez instructed helpfully. "The treaty will automatically translate into all member species' legal frameworks." One by one, the council members added their approval to the document. Each signature felt like a surrender. Not just of their ultimatum, but of their entire understanding of how the universe worked. When the last signature was recorded, Vasquez stood and bowed politely. "Excellent. I'll transmit the finalized treaty to all relevant governments. I believe this marks the beginning of a much more interesting era in galactic relations." She headed toward the exit, then paused and turned back to the stunned council. "Oh, and Admiral? You might want to update your intelligence reports. The next time someone asks what humanity's most dangerous weapon is, you can tell them it's not our technology." "Then what is it?" Admiral Zexhai asked weakly. Captain Vasquez's smile was both friendly and absolutely terrifying. "Our curiosity." As the human delegation left the chamber, the council sat in silence, contemplating a galaxy where the old rules no longer applied. Outside the viewing ports, their remaining fleets waited for orders that would never come. While somewhere in the distance, reality itself continued to bend around a single ship that should not have been possible. The age of humanity had begun.